Won't do it. They'll buy it for millions, and they'll bury it. They'll bury the patents, whatever. So the only thing, called On the Nature of Things. You might have seen the show, The Nature of Things. Very fortunate because, you know, I went through a lot, like a lot of people do. I was called into work and, of course, handed a check for $50,000 and said, thanks for your 10 years. Then I had to sue, and that was a 5.5-year lawsuit. Then I had to sue the 2 lawyers for misappropriating funds that were representing me. And during all of this, what I was thankful about, though, while I was so sick, and I mean I was sick, 8 teeth fell out, half my hair fell out, and I was half covered in bleeding eczema, and I didn't have enough energy to crawl to the bathroom. Back then, you know, there was all this yuppie flu, chronic fatigue syndrome, all this and that. But mine was initiated by a viral, and it was published in Acta Neurological Scandinavia, which is the top neurological journal in Europe. Unfortunately, it's all in Dutch. It showed that if you took these specific fats, that about 80% of the people could go back to work in 3 months. So, Dr. Peter Behan, the Harvard-trained neurologist, he put me on to a Dr. David Horobin. Dr. David Horobin, unbeknownst to me and his lovely wife at the time, Sherry, they were basically, Horobin became the father of clinical medicine with fatty acids. So this is why I was in demand on TV a lot in the 90s, because there I was talking about omega-6 and omega-3 fats, and nobody had a clue what the heck I was talking about, okay? But I went on these fats, and 90% recovered in 6 or 8 months. And then I reached out as an activist to try and help other people with a lot of conditions, including things like MS and so forth. And that's sort of how I got started in all of this. Of course, I've since then, with all the research on fatty acids, I've helped lots of people, lots and lots of people get over things they're not supposed to get over. Today I had calls about MS. Today I had a visit from a CFL Hall of Famer that I helped his wife. She within 5 years with glioblastoma. In February, it's a 3-month death sentence. I have people 15 years plus out with pancreatic cancer that came to me terminal. I even have ones that had 3 and 4 kinds of cancer that had already picked up their funeral home and had been through palliative radiation and were 80 pounds, and they are alive today. So this applies to all our health, and this will show why so many problems are going on today, all right? Now, where to start? You can read this later, okay? It's just sort of an outline. But what we really need to start to understand, health-wise, is this is the unit of life. Not your heart, not your liver, not your kidney. See, the problem with modern medicine chops you up into all these organs and pieces, and then you go see specialists. But most diseases, what are they? They're degenerative diseases. They're diseases that break us down cell by cell. So what we need to understand is that if the cells are all working, then that tissue's working. If that tissue's working, then the organ's working. If the organs are all working, then the body's all working. Okay, so we need to understand what's going on at this level. Now you might say, okay, there's 3 components to the body and that we need in our food supply. There's carbohydrates, which, you know, people think are the only source of energy. Then there's proteins, which builds your muscle and everything else. And then there's fats, and of course they said that fats weren't important, right? You know, they told you eat margarine and don't eat eggs and flip-flop back and forth. Fats are probably so much more important than anything else you eat. Okay, I've been eating 4 to 5 eggs a day for 25 years. I take fatty acids every day, and so does everybody in my family. The more fat you eat, if it's live, proper fats from nature, you will lose more weight. The enemy here is adulterated fats, the enemy is sugar, and the enemy is processed carbs. In other words, the enemy is about 2/3 of what you're looking out that window at. You know know 76% of the products in that store have sugar added to them? 76% in every grocery store. So it is wise. Walk around the outside and get the hell out. It is wise. Only buy food that goes bad in 3 or 4 days. It is wise, okay? Eat like your grandfather or great-grandfather. Now, let's take a look at the cell, okay? This is your nucleus where your genetic material is, right? Don't believe anything you hear from the geneticists. They'll be out of business soon because virtually no diseases are, hardly any diseases are genetic. If cancer was genetic, do you know how many people? If cancer was genetic, do you know how many people would be on planet Earth today?
No, not
0. If most of these diseases were genetic, there'd be 0 people on planet Earth today. What you have to understand is it's what they call epigenetics. That means we have these good genes, bad genes, ugly genes, Levi genes, whatever, right? So we all got the good, bad, and the ugly, like Clint said, right? It's whether they get expressed. We've really known this for a long time because studies were done with twins a long time ago. Why does one get breast cancer at 20 and one at 60 when they both had the gene? It's whether it gets expressed. Now, the question becomes then, okay, they spent $10 billion to map the genome about a decade ago. They spent $10 billion. And they were going to cure all the diseases. Guess how many they cured? 0. It was only 10 billion spent. Okay? So, this is our genetic material in here, your RNA and DNA. There's a double lipid layer that surrounds it. Think of it like a fort in old-time Texas. That's the protector. Around this whole cell is a double lipid layer. Lipid is fat, okay? Now, in this double lipid layer floats a sea of protein. This is all your ion channels and where your interceptors take place and all that stuff moves into the cell and out of the cell. About 60 days ago, a major discovery, which Orban knew about, was finally, looks like the guy will get a Nobel Prize for it. But guess what they discovered? And I forget whether it's on the front page of cell biology or whatever. I got it somewhere here. But these different fats in the fold, think of them like bricks that fit together. If they're the right bricks and they fit together, they keep the bad guys out. If they don't, it screws up everything. Why? If it's really bad, you get a leaking out of here of this seed. You get a leaking of proteins. These things called amyloids start to leak out of the cells. Geez, CTE, anybody see the movie Concussion? What do you think's going on? It's rupturing of the cell membranes. So out leaks proteins, out bleeding, and so forth. Now this little baby here, do you know what these are? Anybody know what those might be? Mitochondria. That's where we make our energy. Okay? The important part is, again, they have a double lipid layer around them. Why? All of these are the critical parts to a cell. The energy, the genetic material, and then the plasma with all the channels in and out and so forth. Distribution within the cell. Okay? Now you gotta remember there's millions of them right there. Millions. Okay? Now, what's important to understand then, the sea of protein floats with these fats. The fats control that sea. If the fats are bad, then you have a rough sea. Modern medicine, didn't look at this at all. They've been looking at the fact that everything is about amino acids and proteins for 70 years. And guess what? I just had to do the preface on this for a book that's about to come out. They, in effect, put the cart before the horse. The horse is the fats. The fats direct it all. And they looked at the cart, and they thought that whatever they did with the cart mattered the most. It doesn't. The cart is going to follow the fats. So what they finally discovered is this is why they really haven't solved many diseases in 70 years. In fact, they perpetrated tons of disease. Why? They told you no fat, low fat. And then they put a whole bunch of sugar in those products. They could not have dropped 10 atomic bombs on North America to destroy more people's health than that simple, no fat, low fat, with added sugar. I'll show you biochemically what goes on. I know where it is, the front page of Biology, I think October this month. They've now discovered that fat, think of fat, when you metabolize fat, you make like this chemical compound, it's about this long, but it's like a Pac-Man, it eats the sugar. So this is why your grandfather, they could eat all this fat, or they could eat all this animal lard and everything else, have a nice big piece of cake with all the sugar or whatever, or honey in it, whatever, this, or sweet desserts. And it never bothered them. Why? Because they ate all the fat first. Okay? And by the way, when we look at each other, guess what you're looking at? Nothing but fat. Your hair, your skin, your neck, it's all fat. It's all we are, is fat. Because that's the other side of every cell. So if you want to look good, put the right fats together. You see, we didn't have to use it. We didn't, there wasn't cellulite 60, 70 years ago. What's cellulite? Crooked fats. They're called trans fats. I bet you all think they're going to disappear. You've been watching the news, they're supposed to disappear out of Canada January the 1st, right? January 1st, no more trans fats in the food. They have already designed something else. And it looks like it will be worse molecularly than trans fats. It's called interestified fats. So again, private enterprise, in the name of the bomb, has moved ahead of our geniuses that run the government. You know, the guy there with the guy that, the river raptor. No, what else does he do? The drama guy? Anyways. Selfie, that's him. The guy who takes his phone picture and smiles, never stops. Anyways, I shouldn't be, as if we haven't got bad enough in Ontario here, right? Is it an it or her or what or who?
She's on her way out, it's okay.
Oh, listen, you know what? I wouldn't get so mad if she didn't, if people like that didn't screw up our finances and put our jeopardy, our children and our grandchildren. I mean, all you have to do is know the gas plant, you know, how bad these people are. Anyways, back to this. We're here for help, okay?
Don't stress everyone out.
And how does this affect your blood pressure?
Okay. What, talking about wind or?
No.
I'll show you,
Eating like
okay?
fats helps
So,
blood pressure.
we need the good fats. The icosanoid, okay, which I'm an expert in. Icosanoids are these molecules that are made from our fats. So the alpha-linolenic, cis-linoleic, dehomogamma-linolenic acid, you know, there's a test on this afterwards. Spelling can be rough though. But once you get the spelling, it's a hell of a game of Scrabble, you know, 2 moves and she's out. So what happens here is these fats, they go in the cell membrane, and then off of that cell membrane through your fat metabolism, they produce these things called icosanoids. Go to your doctor and ask him, does he know about leukotrienes, thromboxans, lipoxins, and prostaglandins? These clowns don't know any of this, okay? This is really sophisticated biochemistry, and the most hated subject by every doctor is second-year medical school, and it's called biochemistry, all right? Now, these are the components then that make up the cell membrane. Here's the important part though. Half of all your cells, on average, in the body, half of your cells is saturated fat. You know the thing they told you not to eat? There has never been one molecule of saturated fat found in anyone's artery, ever. Ever. Okay? That was, this whole cholesterol thing was a total myth going back to Minnesota in the 1950s and Ansel Keys. It was all fraud, total fraud. Okay? Now, so saturated fat, half of all your membranes are saturated fat. Why do they have to be saturated fat? Otherwise you'd fall apart. You know butter, coconut oil, animal lard, you know at room temperature it's hard. Okay? You need that for structure on your cell membranes, on your cells. So you need some of these, 50% of them, need to be those hard oils, saturated fats. The other 50% on average are polyunsaturates. The polyunsaturates, okay, are your liquid, you know, your sunflower, your even primrose, your, you know, whatever, okay, safflower oil and so forth, right? Now, so 50-50, saturated, polyunsaturated. These enzymes that convert these fats, called the delta-6, delta-5, delta-4 enzyme, they're mainly in the liver, but they are at the cell level. Think of it like a filter. In come the fats from nature. These act as a catalyst. They're called enzymes. They break down the fats and add another molecule, and it becomes these components. Then these components go out in your bloodstream into your cells. Then when they're in your cells, and you hurt something, okay, then that sends off a message of inflammation. Okay, so that can be a leukotriene, a thromboxane, very sophisticated, but out goes the message, pain, inflammation. Or out goes the message, open the blood vessel, synthesize the cholesterol, regulate the blood pressure. So we're going to go to the one that's made first, up here. It's past the delta-6 enzyme. Now the reason for that is, when you go from here down to here, these components become a smaller percentage in the cell. When you go this way, they're a smaller percentage. So the farther up here, the more of that you're going to need, because you're going to need some of that to make this molecule down here, and some of it to make this, and so forth. All you've been hearing about is DHA and EPA from fish oil, omega-3. Okay? You're really being misled down the garden path. They're overdosing people on these omega-3 fish oils to the tune of 200 to 500 times too much. And these all compete for the same enzymes, so the more of that you have, you shut down this. So let me tell you what you got to target. You got to target prostaglandin 1. Why? I'll tell you what it does. See if this wouldn't affect a few diseases out there. It's your bronchial vasodilator. What does that mean? Opens your blood vessels in your lungs to accept oxygen. Now, that's done by making this prostaglandin 1. You want to know one of the things that inhibits that? Have you heard of pasteurized milk? When you heat milk, you form molecules called peptides. Peptides inhibit the release of prostaglandin 1, so you don't get the bronchial vasodilation. So if you don't want your kids to have asthma, okay, make sure they're making prostaglandin 1. I'll show you how to do that with gamma-linolenic acid. And they can throw away their puffers. And don't feed them milk unless it's raw. And be prepared to go to jail for 60 days. Even if you lease the cow. Isn't that ridiculous? I mean, geez. You can go to Europe, and they're selling raw milk in vending machines, for God's sakes. There's 5 states in the US it's legal. They throw a guy in jail for helping people be healthy. Anyways, so the key is raise this prostaglandin 1. So it's a bronchial vasodilator. It's a peripheral vasodilator. That means you no longer will ever have cold hands, cold feet, cold nose. It means that appendages that mainly are on the male species will now get blood flow. And the other appendage that will get blood flow is a part of the brain called the temporal lobe. A whole bunch of this thing called rage will go away. One of the reasons we have such a huge problem in the indigenous population is because they used to get tons of this fat. They ate seal, not fish. Fish was 10%, 80% seal meat. Seal meat was a different configuration of EPA and DHA than fish oil. They want you to become an Eskimo. You never will eating fish oil. Anyways, because they ate all this fat, the enzymes are lazy in the liver of the indigenous peoples and the Eskimos. So what happens to them? Bingo. You feed them, you put them on a diet of Coca-Cola and potato chips, and they going down for the count, big time. 50% increase in cancer, 50% increase in diabetes, 50% increase in violence activity, 50% increase in addiction, 50, you know, do I need to go on? And it can all be solved by just letting them going back to eat what their metabolism needs. You know, they did a study for some people from the States in the 90s in a prison, nonetheless, in England. And they gave these people, this was juvenile delinquents, and 450 of them, and they gave them these fatty acids, ethanol, cod liver oil, and a multivitamin. In 6 months, 80% of all the violence disappeared. Not just in the prison population, also the guards. So we are inducing a lot of this because it's affecting blood flow. See, the brain doesn't work so good when there's not a lot of blood flow to it. It's like every other part. I often joke about with the men, you know, I go, do you know that 50% of the men in North America have erectile dysfunction? So that means if there's no blood getting there, there's 50% of them blood flowing into the brain. So that means that 50% of them not only have erectile dysfunction, but are borderline nut bars. I thought you'd like that, ladies.
We already knew that.
We already knew that. I love it. Okay. So the key here, now what else does it do? Prostaglandin 1. That is your most powerful anti-inflammatory. In other words, that is your most important thing to produce to basically get rid of pain. Okay? Some of this was theorized by my mentor, Horlin, when he was a professor at the University of Montreal in 1982. You want to get people off opiates, you got to raise their pain tolerance way on the moon. You want to get them off the Tylenols, the Percocets, the prednisones, because these things will kill them long term. They will kill them. Even the doctors are all being told, you know, back off the painkillers, back off the steroids, NSAIDs. Why? Because if people are on this stuff long term, bingo, big problem. Just helped a little 1-year-old that was born with severe jaundice, and she had the top 4 liver specialists at Sick Kids Hospital. Severe jaundice, liver was swollen, the spleen, and they put her almost as soon as she was born, they put her on steroids to take down the swelling. They left her on the damn stuff for 6-8 months. I went over about 3 months ago or whatever, said start backing off, work with your pharmacist or whatever. Of course, they don't want to know this. And this child, it was $20,000 just for the blood work in the U.S. that had to be specially got paid for by OHIP. And 5 months in the Sick Kids Hospital. So I put her on evening primrose oil and some coconut oil. Got her off the steroids. Called me yesterday, everything's fine. But they still want to do mapping on her and take biopsy on the liver because they put down that, you know, she had all these problems, but they're all gone away. So they, you know, I just told the father, I said, you know, it's up to you, but I'm an old guy, and I have an old saying, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. So it's, you have to understand how the system works. The system works this way. When a doctor prescribes a medical procedure or a drug to you, okay, then the liability, first of all, is with the medical device or the prescription, the pharmacy company, or Health Canada, if something happens to you. But once you're on it, if he changes that and changes it to another drug or takes you off it or lowers it, now the liability switches to the doctor. So how does a doctor avoid liability?
Never switches you.
Put them on drugs for the rest of their life. Hi, how long you been on Prozac? 22 years. Yeah? Geez, you must have been deficient on it when you were born. I mean, it's criminal. People need to take charge. I just had a guy who was 5 years on Crestor. And this was the father-in-law of the little girl. I didn't know, I'm just heading out the door. I said, "You got anything for cramps?" I said, you're not on any statins, are you? He goes, "Yeah." I goes, "How long you doing it?" 5 years. I go, "How long have your legs been bothering you?" 5 years. I says, "Get off it." He phones me in 3 days. He says, "Well, I haven't felt this good in 5 years."
Yeah, but he's not just not taking the medication the doctor said. You've asked him to start taking.
Also get on
Yes.
some fats and get off the trans fats and get off the sugar and so forth. Yeah, exactly. The kinds of things I put in front of you there, okay? But, so we've got your most powerful anti-inflammatory. You'll love this one. Okay. One of the most powerful things that's misunderstood about all this. Yes, they use evening primrose for rheumatoid arthritis, or they use it for this or that or whatever. But here's what people don't understand. It produces, it initiates, prostaglandin 1 initiates the T suppressor cells. The T suppressor cells are the part of your immune system that prevent your immune system from going into hyperdrive and attacking your body. And that's what lupus is. All your itises are autoimmune. Those are autoimmune. So we now know the key to autoimmune is initiate the T suppressor cells. You see, everything is balance here. Okay, everything is about balance. 2 words you want to go out of here with tonight: balance and moderation. Do you know that you can drink yourself to death with water?
Yes, you can drown.
Yeah. Why would you take 4 fish oil capsules, which is the equivalent of eating 80 fish a day? That's how much you get in 80 fish. What's in those 4 capsules? Now, the other thing you might ask is this: how come this EPA, DHA, and the fish oils that everybody's buying and taking, and now it's krill oil, seal oil, the latest is squid oil, and giant squid from Antarctica? I think they're going to be looking for something with fish oil in it from Mars soon, the way it's going. It's a $4 billion industry in just North America now, from nowhere. Of course, it's out there as 2 drugs now. But the only thing it's approved for, because the only thing it can do is lower triglycerides. So that's all it's approved for, is drugs. So you can buy, you can buy your $10 worth of cod liver oil for $10, or you can buy their drug for $100. And the only thing they both do, main thing they do, is lower your triglycerides, okay? And that's a fallacy anyways. Who cares? I mean, if you're eating a lot of fat, would your triglycerides be up? And cholesterol. There's large particle LDL, small particle LDL, and then there's HDL. They don't differentiate, so all the measurements with cholesterol mean nothing. They mean nothing. They're bogus. Why? Because there's 2 types of LDL. So, they started out with, here's the total number for your cholesterol when Lipitor came out. Well, then a few years later, that doesn't mean anything. There's an HDL and LDL. So then they said those are the numbers. And of course, that doesn't mean anything now because there's 2 kinds of LDL. But of course, they don't test for that because it's too expensive. So they just put everybody on cholesterol-lowering drugs. If anybody here is on cholesterol-lowering drugs, or you have anybody that you know that's on them. And by the way, people ask me all the time, "Oh, well, a doctor, this stuff, it's been around or whatever." I says, give your head a shake. Give your head a shake. There's been 50 million people on these cholesterol-lowering drugs for 20 years. Largest selling drug in the history of man.
That's the statins, isn't it?
Statins, yeah. So heart attacks and strokes gone down?
No.
What do you mean? 50 million people on it for 20 years. Heart attacks and strokes haven't gone down? Well, that shit must really work. Boy, what, not big enough sample size? Not long enough, 20 years?
I was on it for a month and I brought it back to the doctor and said, "No way,
Good,
what's that?"
yeah.
And
Muscle aches, muscle cramps, you can't get out of bed, you can die of muscle rhabdomyolysis, people die from it. That's why they took some off the market. But now it just warns you. I don't know why they go through all this on TV, you know, the flowers and everything else. Why don't they just skip right to the end and go like this? This could kill you. Buyer beware. Goodbye. Save yourself a lot of money. It doesn't have to be 1 hour of music and dance and flowers, right? But you want to know what regulates cholesterol?
Blood pressure.
Cholesterol synthesis is regulated by prostaglandin 1. Now, this thing called blood pressure, what regulates it? Guess. Prostaglandin 1. You want me to go on? It's about 95% of the diseases out there are happening because we're not producing this. We're producing too much of this. This is all pain and inflammation. Now, how does sugar fit into this? Ah, the enemy sugar. Finally, they're catching up to that bad boy, right?
You're not talking
Get
about
rid
that.
of everything with sugar in your house. Here's why it's so damaging. It activates this enzyme, the delta-5 enzyme.
Now, when you say sugar, you're talking about manufactured.
I'm talking white
You're not
sugar.
talking about sugar. from
I'm not
cows.
talking about unpasteurized honey. I'm not talking about whole fruit. I'm not talking about, because they have other things in it that affect it. No, brown sugar is just white sugar with molasses in it.
How about just cane sugar?
No, it's BS.
What about molasses? Molasses.
Blackstrap molasses, the best are blackstrap molasses, maple syrup,
Oh,
or unpasteurized honey. You know who used all that? Your grandparents.
Yeah.
Before this white stuff came along. The white dead. But here's how it works. What happens is the sugar activates this enzyme through insulin. Okay? When it activates this, what it means is you get because the delta-5 enzyme, okay, is needed here, it activates arachidonic acid to release all the inflammation. So if you want to just fill your body with inflammation, eat sugar. Okay? Makes cigarettes look like candy. Period. See, cigarettes, the carcinogens of that compare this enzyme. This is much deeper. Now here's what happens. You become diabetic, guess what happens? Now you're impaired up here as well. So now what happens in diabetes? You take insulin. You know, you monitor your blood sugar level. Can't get too high, too low, or whatever. You're regulating these enzymes, manipulating them. But here's the sad part. All diabetics don't produce enough of this. So you start to lose circulation in your fingers, your toes, your nose, your whatever, right? And then when it gets bad enough, if you get an infection, what happens? It's called a diabetic ulcer, then it gets to, once you got diabetic ulcers, 50% are dead. We show them by raising prostaglandin 1, 80% of the amputations don't have to take place. How do you do it? You take some evening primrose oil and you make sure the cofactors are there, because the gamma-linolenic acid through elongation will head to become dehomogamma-linolenic acid, and then it will pick up niacin, biotin, pyridoxine, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin C, and calcium to become prostaglandin 1. So you need all the pieces of the puzzle. So you can see why so many people are falling sick. Now what's probably the most important mineral in that group that I just gave you is magnesium. Because if you're on prescription drugs, they rob your body of magnesium. And the signs of magnesium deficiency are muscle cramps and aches, heart arrhythmia, heart palpitations, restless legs at night, and constipation. That should cover about 70% of the population in Canada. You will not believe how our food, 70–80% of the magnesium is now depleted out of our food supply because of the farming. No crop rotation, nothing. I'm not a big believer in a lot of supplementation, but what you need to do is you need to take a multivitamin with high absorption of minerals for insurance, because our food is getting worse every day. You need to take fats, because these are the things that oxidize and break down. No problem. Glad you could make it. Okay? Somebody had a question?
Where do you get, so you'll get enough minerals from taking a multivitamin?
No, it's for insurance. It's for insurance. You want to do what,
Oils.
yeah, what you want to do is what it says here. Get rid of the bad, the processed food, and start eating real food. Okay? Obviously, the more local, the better. From countries that you can trust. You know, stay away from stuff from China. Well, China, I mean, you know, they chopped the head off that guy that, you know, he put plastic in the infant formula that killed 100 babies, and do you really think they care what they sell us? They'll kill their own kids? Hello.
You mentioned, you talk about vegetables and stuff. A friend of mine, a farm out in Colorado, he's giving a bag full of carrots. Ate one, wow, that would taste good. And it was nice and solid.
Yep.
That's tough. Would be good at the grocery store.
Oh yeah, well, it's Mexico and Florida.
Friend took
It's like eating a tomato out of your backyard versus what you see at the store. I mean, the difference is the same.
You saw them at the Costco warehouse, putting 19 carrots in a bag. One from Canada and called product from Canada. The rest
Sure.
of them came from China.
Oh, yeah. No. I think it's criminal that we're not being protected with truthful ingredient laws, packaging laws, anything. These guys get away with murder. I mean, you know that how many packages down here say 0 trans fats on them? Do you know the story behind that? About 10 years ago, the Canadian and US got together, the manufacturing associations and the health and all the other clowns. And what, I better watch my language here. I've been shot at before, no. What they did was, they had to come up with a method because of all the damning information that come out from the Weston Price Foundation, from Dr. Mary Hennig, about trans fat. She blew the whistle on them in 1979, how bad they were for you. So what happened was the American and US governments, and this is when Bloomberg was fighting stuff in New York City. What happened is they agreed that if you had 0.5 grams or less of trans fats per serving in the product, you could say 0 trans fats on it. So everybody agreed, and then they walked away, and all they did was change the serving size so that they could put 0 trans fats. They didn't change any of the amount of trans fats or anything in any of the products. So the next thing you know is all these labels have to say 0 trans fats. Now, myself and Professor Peskin, we decided to take it upon ourselves with a place called MIT. Have you heard of MIT? Okay, well, they got a few genius mathematicians there, so we said, take 0.5 grams of trans fats. We want to see how many molecules that is for the average body that has to deal with. 0.5 grams of trans fats provides 800 molecules of poison. Now, last year, published out of a place called McMaster, my alma mater, it hardly made it to the 4th last page in the, but they looked at 50 years, or 30 years of trans fats. Studies from all around the world. It increases your risk of death by 34% for all causes, and for heart attack and stroke by 29%.
So, but that's a population growth strategy, yeah?
You mean depopulation?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Well, the only good thing about all the refugees coming in with the 7 or 8 babies, that's going to put a stop to that.
They'll end up like us.
The grocery store.
What you buy in?
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, I have a lot of women who come to me from all over for years that have been trying for 10 and 15 years to get pregnant. Tons. And you loved up one of the latest ones. She was 31 and she came with her husband and they've been through 2 in vitros and they spent tens of thousands of dollars and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And of course they'd send them away saying, your husband has slow sperm. Anyways, so I told him much what right in front of this sheet here. I said, you gotta get off the packaged stuff, this and that. And I said, take this multivitamin, let's thin your blood a little bit with some flavonoids, and take yourself about 6 capsules of this and 2 of this. She phoned 12 days later, she was pregnant. She gave birth in January. That's after your $50,000 or $100,000 of your tax dollars was spent on it. No. Well, no, but see, here's the point. You say to people, you know, they come to me and they go, well, think of it. You know, where in the world do women have no problem getting pregnant?
Us.
Third world countries.
And Quebec.
Third world countries. No, third world countries. It's true. Why? They don't have that. It's that simple. It's that simple.
Yeah, they have local stalls and local.
Exactly. Okay? Because what? What impairs these enzymes so that we don't make this? You know what impairs this? Viruses. You know what impairs it? Stress hormones. You know what impairs it? The older we get, it gets weaker. It's aging. What else impairs it? Obviously, carcinogens. What else impairs it? Diabetes. What else impairs it? Alcoholism. What else impairs it? Mood disorders like schizophrenia, bipolar. Okay?
Could you say lack of vitamin D?
Huh?
Could you say lack of vitamin D?
You could say lack of vitamin D will affect it because it's needed in here. You could say magnesium. My good friend Dr. Carolyn Dean in Maui, right? The world's authority on magnesium. Her and I go back 30 years. Okay, so magnesium will cause it. You may have the fats if you're missing one of those pieces. So B3, B6, B12, vitamin C, zinc. Isn't it interesting? Colds, flus, viruses, right? What do you got here? Zinc, vitamin C, da, da, da. So if you're getting those in your diet and you're taking these fats like I'm telling you, you'll never catch a flu or cold. I grew up, was not breastfed. That's the largest source of this GLI. Okay? So number one, women need to breastfeed. Half of them can't breastfeed anymore. Why? Ding. Are they handing this over to Zares afterwards so that they can bill me or whatever? Sales just went down 23%. Thank you, Mr. Beatty. But the key part here is this. So I grew up, I wasn't breastfed. I would catch 5 to 10 colds a year. I had, all through my teens and stuff, I had bronchitis every winter, pleurisy a couple times, and so forth. I had impaired delta 6 because my mother's father was an alcoholic. You wouldn't believe how much of this Scottish, Irish backgrounds.
That's heritage.
Oh yeah, but that's, and it doesn't have, you don't have to be an alcoholic. It's passed on, the weakness of the enzyme.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right, heritage.
Hereditary.
Yes. So what happens is, I had to go on these fats, right, to recover from what happened to me illness-wise. So now it's been 26 years since I had a flu or a cold. And nobody in our family has. Why? We take this stuff every day. Now, there was a patent issued on this in 2012. That medium chain saturates, medium chain, like lauric acid and coconut, long chain polyunsaturates, gamma-linolenic acid, dehomogamma-linolenic acid, and arachidonic acid, like in evening primrose, EPA and DHA, like in fish oil, kill all viruses with a lipid envelope and initiate interferon, which means, and I published on this on the H1N1 crisis in 2009, and nobody would listen. And there's actually a patent on it. Why wouldn't they listen? Do you know how big the aisle is for colds and coughs and flus and crap in every pharmacy?
Never mind the pharmacy, they're in here.
Yeah. So that's all you have to do, and you'll never catch a flu, you'll never catch a cold, you'll never catch a nothing. This is why people don't in third world countries. Why? They eat fat. And if it's the right fats, and you can see how important the breastfeeding is for that. Okay? The critical thing that people need to do is there's no sense spending any money on buying supplements or taking a couple supplements at all if you're not prepared, first and foremost, to get the hell off the trans fats. The adulterated vegetable ones, what are they?